Charlie, it's good to have you with us. Over to you, my friend.
Brilliant. Well, thanks, Carl. And this was an idea that we, a few of us locally came up with a few months ago. I think, as Carl said, everyone aware of reports in the news ongoing of all the different things that have occurred to us as a nation and as a world during COVID. Some positives, some people have made really positive life changes, change of direction has released them from maybe situations they wanted to change, and this is opportunity. But I think on the whole, as the time has gone on, I think a lot of the encounters and the experiences have been negative, especially health, finances, and a lack of connection with people. And so, yeah, we're thinking about a way that we could kind of reconnect with our communities and also take time ourselves to debrief from COVID. So it just came as an idea, got a little bit of momentum, and before we know it, we were planning an event to be happening in about a month and a half's time. That was back in May. Boris delayed things a little bit with extending till July, and we've still got a slight delay. But it was something that I think once people heard about it, felt, yeah, this is something we want to do. There's something to this. So it was an idea I shared with Carl. He suggested that I share it with a wider group. So here I am. You know, hope it's helpful. If it's not, it doesn't matter. But if there is stuff that you want to know more about, as you'll find out later in the presentation, there's ways that you can connect in if you want to. So I'm just going to share my screen with you. Okay, so just very briefly, Carl's introduced us, but yeah, we are, my wife and I, Abby, our sons Solomon and Eli moved to Mevagissey just over 6 months ago now, so very recently here. We are pioneers, whatever that word means, but we're here to explore, to pray, to see what God's doing and join in with that. We're not here with any preconceived ideas of what we wanted to do here. We just wanted to settle in, hear God and see where he led us. We connected with South West Baptist Association and Rural Ministries in a more direct way. And that's kind of a route that we took on our journey moving here. As Carl mentioned briefly, we used to run the work of 24/7 prayer in Ibiza for 5 years, which was a wonderful experience of prayer and chaos and encounters, which I'm happy to chat about another time. And my wife and I have always kind of been involved in community developments, way that we can engage the church with the community, ways that we can listen to the community, and ways that we can connect and link. So it's something that's always kind of been involved in our lives, and this is a bit of an extension of that here in Mevagissey. So the Big COVID Debrief, talk, create, reflect. There's a fancy logo and slogan we came up with, because that's what you need to have if you're doing an event, of course. The context this has come out of and what we live in, Mevagissey is a large village. There's 2 churches here, Church of England and a URC/Methodist LEP. There's a lot of historical favour towards the churches. 2 of the members of the churches are on the Zoom now. There is you know, smallish attendance across the church, very faithful people across the church, elderly demographic as such, wanting to engage with the community, but through various resource and other things, it's been a bit difficult in latter years. So we've been chatting, connecting, getting to know people, and this was an idea shared with some of the members of the URC Methodist Church who felt it was something that they wanted to get behind and move forward with. But yeah, so this is the context we're looking to set this up in. That's our context. Who is involved in this, where we are? It's a partnership with the local URC Methodist LEP. So they have agreed to host the event in their building, to put their resource behind it. They're still probably not sure what I mean by this event, half of the church, but they seem to think it's a good idea and are up for doing it, which I like. But we've also got some local community partners. So the school wants to be involved. The local councillor is up for it, wants to volunteer as well. Various health professionals are willing to come and attend or be part of it. And there's others in the community that we're going to want to draw into this project, so you see the benefit of it. And the volunteer base is primarily a church community. It's something that we are encouraging the church to host. The churches, well, all places really have been shut over COVID, the church is included. And so this is a really good way for the church to reconnect with the community by hosting a space. And it means that we're helping people not just with emotional and physical issues, but also spiritual ones too, as we guide people on their journeys with God. So what's the actual big idea? Well, ultimately, we're creating a space in the community to process the impact of COVID-19. And we feel it's important that people need to talk. And so space, whatever we do, there needs to be a place for people to be able to talk their stories through with others. Create. So I think it's important that people are able to be creative in their expression, using different tools, different imagery, different sculptures, different ways of expressing themselves in order to try and to connect with and process COVID and how it's impacted their lives. And also space to reflect. Time for people to stop, to listen, to reflect, to pray, to have some stillness, to maybe grieve, to maybe process loss, providing a safe space for all this to happen in the community, and one that is facilitated. This isn't something that we need to do to anybody. It's providing a space that almost leads itself, but we get to facilitate, join in and lead with that. So it's multi-purpose. Originally, my Nabby's work is primarily focused outside of the church walls. We're just in the community all the time, getting to know people. And so originally this idea was, right, we need to create a space in the church for the local community to come in and use it, which is absolutely what we still want to do. But I think as it transpired more, we actually realized this could be a bit more of a multi-purpose. And actually for churches, as they have already reopened or about to legally be reopened some more, time for church communities to debrief, pause and pray about what they should be doing next. For the congregations, for a really good, excuse isn't the word, but a really good opportunity is a better word, for the church not have to jump back into all the activities they used to do because people miss them or for the sake of it, but really giving God time to speak about, has anything changed? Do we need to do anything different? What do we want to move on with and what don't we want to move on with? And I just wonder whether out of that process, if COVID hasn't already brought that up for most of us, it just gives another opportunity saying, God, you've disrupted the world, not directly, but disruption has happened. What does your church look like the other side? So imagine your church could put this on. So it's just church members initially, create this space, use it, feel it, learn how it works, get to know it. And then off the back of that, if you don't feel like opening your doors to everybody because COVID numbers are rising, still a bit nervous about it, or it might not be appropriate in your setting, you could then invite friends or family, or maybe one of the, if your local school wants to be involved, they'd be happy to bring a class down who could experience the space. Youth groups, people like Guides, Boys Brigade or other youth groups, different settings and parts of the community that could book the space, maybe come and use it for an hour as part of their learning, as part of their own debrief. The beauty about this resource is that it's for everybody. Everybody has experienced the impact of COVID, and everybody needs to process and debrief if they want to choose to. It's just the way they want to do that. It can also be an open event. So, one of the things we will hopefully do eventually is have it open for a number of hours and people can just walk in and walk out if they want to. So a hosted space, and maybe that will happen a little bit later on in the season for us, because being such a tourist area, COVID numbers are high and people are still a bit nervous about coming and using. But essentially this is creating a space which allows ongoing reflection. So this space could be left up all the time in your buildings, however they're set up. Other groups could use your facilities and rent them as they do in the building we have. But again, these could be just on the wall, part of the process, part of the building that people are continually reflecting. So what does it actually look like? I'm obviously a graphic designer, as you can tell from this slide, but I thought it'd be helpful just to at least look at the room a little bit. So in terms of St Andrews, where it's going to be, the entrance is here. There's a hall in, there's a mini hallway into a big room at the back. There's another room here, and garden is a grand word for what it is, but essentially we've made as much room as we can at the front of the church to create a bit of a peaceful area for people to reflect. Now, in this church, they have big boards on the wall which are meant for soundproofing, and there's just nothing else on there. So we've decided to use those soundboards and created signs that fit over them. So what you're about to see is very then bespoke to our space, but there's no reason why you couldn't print these yourselves and use them in your own spaces. So essentially, when you come in the foyer, there's just a welcome, a big sign welcoming people. In the hallway, so this is where it explains a little bit about the space. You know, the whole point of this is that people can come in, experience it, and go out without having to speak to you if they don't want to. We hope they will engage with us, but it's a space that should speak for itself. So important to have really good information on the walls to welcome people and to allow them to see what's doing. All of these signs and resources will be available to you if you want them. We've got a place where we can provide refreshments. I think people are going to talk. They often like to do it over coffee, and not instant coffee, please, but some decent stuff if you can. A way of, you know, just enjoying time together. So we provide some refreshments, and what we've created here is to try and get people at a starting point to kind of draw them back into the height of COVID. And some people may not need that. They may already be there. But we have a starting point where you journey. And for us, what that means is people pick up a piece of string. We're a fishing village. So a lot of this stuff is reflected in terms of local craft, local activities. So at the beginning, people pick up a piece of string, and it explains that piece of string basically is, as you go around this room, is essentially you tie a knot if something, what's the word? It's rubbish when you're not in a room where people can talk to you and give you a word, isn't it? Has impacted them and they relate to. So you tie a knot in it, and I'll explain in a minute what happens with that string. But they pick up this string, and it's kind of like something to carry around as they're doing these activities. So then basically I've created like a big, that's not good graphics, it's like a big trigger board. So kind of all the main stuff that kind of reminds us of COVID, characters, things that happened, people going to Durham to check their eyesight, you know, all that type of stuff that we've experienced and learned. But again, a lot of people I know say they do need to process stuff, but some people feel they don't need to, maybe, and they might not. But I think it's helpful to kind of draw people back in if they feel helpful. Okay, actually that did affect me, or that did impact me, and use that as well. We're then doing this hope rope thing, which again, we're going to have this big thick fishing rope. We're going to make it into a big heart, and there's going to be an anchor there as well. And people can just simply tie labels on. Now that can be stuff they want to hope for, or things they need hope for the future. It can also be their experiences of COVID, significant things that happened in their journey. So they're able to just write it on a label, tie it on, and there'll be this rope that is there during the whole time. This is around, that enables people to express themselves in this way. There's also lots of words in a basket, so people can pick up words, and it might help them to relate to a word they felt during COVID and actually carry that with them as well. So at the beginning of this journey, trying to create as much opportunity for people to connect with something that may have impacted them. The next things we're doing is express yourself. So we've got these concertina books. I've never seen them before, but we've got a really creative person in our group. And essentially these books are turned into big concertinas. And so you can kind of draw or paint on both sides of the paper, and it becomes this huge book. So we're creating these community books. The school is having one, other parts of the community are having one, but we're going to create some in our hall as well. So again, it kind of creates a collective memory as a community. You may be in a city, which is a bit more difficult to get that overall sense of community there, but within your neighborhood or diocese or wherever you are, it may be that it just captures what happened to your community, things you can pray over, things just out of interest. So we've got some books, but also people can display their art on the wall in a big kind of collage thing as well. We then got this reflection garden, very simple. We've just been bought a lovely bench by one of the church members, and there's some grass and plants and shrubberies around. There's also a seagull there at the moment whose babies are there, and every time we go near it, it's attacking us. So we're hoping the seagull and the babies go before we do this event. Otherwise, it's not going to be so much of a reflection garden, probably more of a swearing garden, but we'll just wait and see. But essentially, this space is time to breathe, process loss, remember loved ones, whether someone lost one directly through COVID or just during the COVID period. We all know the difficulties of trying to mourn, trying to do anything during this COVID period. And one of the activities outside is simply there'll be some stones, and you can write maybe someone's name, something you've lost, so that reflection. And then we're creating kind of like an Ebenezer, like a pile of stones where people can continue and reflect and to see. And hopefully that'll be a good way for people to reflect and process as well. The good thing about it being outside is that will be available all the time, even when the building itself is closed. Again, my graphic design is quality here. So in the middle of this room, there will be tables where people can just sit and talk, write something. Again, really relax, but gives the opportunity. And you'll know the people you work with, those that are just great at starting conversations out of nowhere, and those are the types of people who will probably be great in this little sphere here. But space where people can sit and relax and talk is often helpful, as we all know. So this is one of the views from Mevagissey. It's a horrible place to live, as you can see. But local photographer, I said, "Oh, can I use your pictures?" And we'll promote them for you, and is well up for that, of course. But yeah, it's just nice local point for reflection. Again, this is trying to keep the identity that isn't generic. This is for us as a village. And then a gratitude wall. So you can write directly on this with, pen, felt tip, whatever, just things that you're thankful for. So a way of just kind of moving through, grief and things that have been difficult, etc., to then switch into hope, gratitude, things that have been good during this time. And then we've got a room that's going to be like all of this is a prayer room to us, but we've got a room that's a bit more specific, a bit more focused on prayer. So these two signs will be outside the room. I think, pray, this is a prayer room, but I think other words are useful for different people and how they think about prayer or connection. This isn't a Christian thing. This is a everyone thing for God to listen to and speak to and express themselves. And then we just felt this verse was quite nice for us, and just kind of that focal point of cast your anxieties on God. And then within the prayer room, so you've had that, this is a beautiful picture of a tree. So you've had that rope that you've carried around with you with all the different knots and stuff. This is an opportunity where you then put this string on this tree. So it's kind of leaving things with God. It's leaving all that journey with God, or, and kind of making that expression to him. Or if people aren't wanting to think about God, but still leaving that as a kind of like, I've processed, I've worked through. Now, of course, it's not going to take half an hour to process COVID. People can come as much as they want. But again, that kind of symbolism and placing we thought might be helpful. And in the back wall is another huge place where people can write their prayers on and express themselves. And then on the way out, people like to take selfies of the places they've been. It might seem a bit crass, but in terms of like being able to connect with the COVID stuff, it's like a social media wall where people can take photos, and it would help to promote the stuff as well. But sometimes people like to do that. Right at the end, we've got another sign that basically we're going to have a whole load of signposting stuff. So different groups in the community that cover whatever, really, mental health, walking groups, whatever it is that people might find it helpful to refer to. I mentioned some of the health professionals at the beginning. They've offered to be in the space at different times. So if people do want to talk or feel signposted, then that's there as well, which we thought could be helpful to people. So that's kind of the main thrust of it, what's happening here, what the idea is about. In terms of joining in then, in terms of why we're kind of discussing this is the ability to do this elsewhere. When we planned this idea, it was not for it to be done elsewhere, replicated. It was just something we thought would be done locally. But again, I think after conversations with Carl and others, I think felt that it would be really helpful for others to have some of the resource if they wanted to do it too. So essentially, if someone was going to join in with this or do their own one, it's important to designate a space in your building or another building where it could be hosted, one that isn't going to be constantly disturbed. Ideally your church building, because it's likely been closed and it's a way of opening that again. But a space that you feel you could have these things around that people can come into. Create a plan based on the three things, and ability to talk, ability to create, and ability to reflect. They're going to be important things to do. Decide whose space yours is primarily for. So you may think, actually, yeah, I want to start with our own church community. This is perfect. Or you may be like, no, we're just ready to reconnect with our community. We've been talking about this for months. It may be straight away you just open your doors to an event or something that welcomes local people in. It's important to engage with local churches as well. You may not want to do all your own. Collaborate together in the same area. Use the resource of the church community. Again, getting to know people, building unity again after COVID, after not seeing each other. Who knows? Relationships between churches could be completely different this side of COVID. And wouldn't it be wonderful if that has an increased unity around our towns and cities? But encourage us to talk with local partners. I just went straight to the councillors, the schools, whoever really, and just said, this is what we're doing. Do you like the idea? And they all said yes. So just because it's a church thing, Christian thing, many of you, I'm sure, know your local community already and the main people in it and can think of who could be helpful in this. But if you haven't or don't, then encourage to see how they can connect. And there's been so many local people who have been doing incredible things during COVID outside of the church, and it'd be really important to include them and not just the church go, oh, we're open again now, so we'll kick back in. It's important that happens. And allow the space itself to do the work. Don't worry about creating a space that is very volunteer heavy, where you have to be there all the time, engage, make sure it runs. Create a space that does its own job. The role for us is to facilitate a space where people can debrief and encounter God. I think that's the main thing. Through all our experiences with 24/7 prayer, especially in Ibiza, the prayer rooms we created, mostly non-Christians used it. People that were searching, journeying, or not at all. They were most of the people that used it. Whenever we had 24-hour prayer days, half of those 1-hour prayer slots were taken up by people that said they didn't have a faith or weren't interested in God, but still went and prayed for an hour, which is more than what most of us do very often. So just don't worry about the barriers. Again, I know I'm probably preaching to those that are already converted in this, but let God do his job in this space and see what emerges. And then just the final slide before we can talk and chat if you want to is, so I created a website for our local one, but then realized that actually, it may be helpful actually to create it so that other people could use it if they wanted to. So I'll put the link in shortly, but on this website now, it's generic front page and then has a Google map. And if you wanted to link in directly with this, then we could create a page for you where your location's advertised on the main website. All we'd need is an image of your local area, the building it's happening, the address, contact information, just confirmation that volunteers are DBS checked. I mean, we're not an organisation, but it'd be helpful if we're going to signpost that we just get confirmation that is happening. And because you're doing a direct link, then you can download all the logos, the printouts, the resources. So there'll be a sign-in page as part of this website where those that are doing this and connected in can have access to all the resources and do what you want with them, really create your own stuff. Maybe we'd create a private Facebook group for that, just for ease of use. But that way, people who kind of log onto this website and see that there's 2, 3, 5, 10, whatever spaces around the country, really. The final thing to say is, as is currently happening probably in September, it was going to happen in July to coincide with the legal restrictions fully ending. But due to the kind of rising cases, still nervousness and stuff, the building isn't available to do the event until September. But this could be done in September, it could be done January, it could be done next year, to be honest with you. But I think most of society is legally opening up and will be. And this seems to me a really key few months, even if there are some restrictions that come back, that for many, this is a significant opening. And the fear that we are seeing and feeling around is immense. And maybe we can be part of easing some of that. That's it. I'm going to hand back to Carl. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Charlie. That was amazing. I obviously heard a fair amount of that before, but that's the first time I've heard it quite like you've just done that presentation. It's a great resource. Thank you so much, guys that are watching. It'd be great if you've got questions, comments, or thoughts. Please do write them into the chat box, or if you do want to ask them. I think we've got a reasonably low number of people on the screen. The best way to attract my attention is on your Zoom screen, depending on the device you're looking at it, there'll be a reactions key. If you tap the reactions key, there'll be a raise hand function. And if you click on raise hand, you'll see what you can now see in the corner of my screen, the top left-hand corner. And that'll notify me you've got a question to ask or a comment. And then afterwards, you can click on lower hand to take it down again. I will try and whiz through the screens to see if you've got your hand physically raised in the air, but it's just helpful if you can raise a digital hand. So get writing questions in the chat box. Charlie, from your point of view, there's obviously quite a bit of resource there, and you went through the various different, for want of a better word, prayer stations that are being set up around the room. Obviously, there's going to be they're a good stimulus, but you were what I found interesting was that you were using local signs and symbols, if you see what I mean, that were familiar to Mevagissey, the ropes, the anchors, those type of things. That's not to say that they wouldn't work in an inner city area a long way away from the sea, but have you got any thoughts just about kind of like, you know, how important is it to hold those resources pure as you've spoken to us about them? How kind of important is it to adapt them, and how precious are you about about us pulling kind of your resources in different directions, I guess is what I'm asking.
Oh yeah, no, do what you want with them. They just happen to work for us. We went through about loads of ideas before we got there. And I would encourage you, please do what works where you do. And as I say, the graphics will be available in a way that you can manipulate and do what you want with them if you've got the right software. So yeah, just crack on and do it.
Brilliant. To answer the question from Sarah about the presentation, yeah, so that PDF will be available, and it will be in the description box of the YouTube video. So if you find the YouTube video, and like I said, I'll just drop into the chat box before we leave in a little bit the URL for the YouTube channel. So if you look, as you see, if you don't know YouTube very well, there's a little kind of down symbol. If you click on that, then the text of the description box will open up underneath the video screen, and in that description will be all the clickable links that you need, so for that presentation and what have you. Another question here from Carol: how can we access the artwork and notices? What's the best way to do that, Charlie?
So there'll be a sign up page on the website, which I'll give you the link to shortly, and if you just sign up there, even if you're not going to do the event necessarily, it's ideal if you do, but then you'll be able to just download them directly from there. So it will, yeah, there'll be different file versions that you can download depending on your graphics packages or who does them. But certainly they will be available in every format, and you can move and change them as you want. Different versions of the logo as well. So
website looks great, my friend. Thank you for building that. It's accessible and contemporary. So yeah, when that goes in the chat in just a second, then have a look at it, guys, before you leave, and you'll be able to kind of open that as a tab on your browser and go back to it later on. It's a question from Andy. Terrific idea, engaging all sorts of people in the community. Can you let SWBA churches know when you are doing this so we can pray for you? Southwest Baptist Association churches abundantly will be praying for you. Yeah, so the date is yet to be confirmed, but it's likely for you guys in Mevagissey to be September, is that right?
Now likely, yeah.
But equally, Andy, it'd be good for us to pray just generally. So whether we keep in contact via Facebook groups or what have you, but so that we're praying for each other's events wherever they are in the country would be just fantastic, and to share ideas and how it's gone as well. So yeah, abundantly that would be the case. I'm interested, guys, in other ideas as well. Whilst you're on the screen, and I don't want to labour tonight and keep you for too long, but we've got a bit of a hive mind tonight on the screen. Charlie's presented a resource. What are your thoughts about what would be helpful for churches and local communities at this point in time? And have you got plans for particular services, or for acts of remembrance, or are there any ideas that you've got that you could usefully share with us tonight? And let's share Hive Mind. And for the purposes of this, just come off mute and shout at me. David, go for it.
Yeah, thanks, Carl. So one of the things that we're looking at up at Smallnest is in the autumn doing a service of remembrance. So we did that back in 2019. 2020 was a bit difficult, but this year is going to be even more poignant because obviously what we've just gone through. And also looking at possibly starting an arts group dealing with those with mental health issues, loneliness and what have you. So I mean, Charlie, this has been great because it's pulled out so many things that are kind of possibly we're looking at separately, but actually this is incorporating it all together. And there's just, yeah, so many different things that it could be done over a long period of time rather than maybe just once or twice or week long. It could be an ongoing thing. But I think the biggest thing to encapsulate out of all of this is this creating that space, that safe space where people can come to and feel valued and yeah, all those things. So yeah, brilliant. So that's just one of the things I wanted to chuck in there.
Thank you so much, Dave. That's super helpful. Thank you. Any other thoughts or ideas?
Yeah, Carl, the Plymouth churches are the ministers are meeting next week. We're looking at perhaps even meeting at Mutley or something like that. But we may draw on this material. So I'm hoping that those that aren't here tonight will have chance to have a flick through and read some of this and catch up before next Tuesday. But we are seriously thinking of getting together in the autumn and planning something together as Plymouth and surrounding area.
Thank you so much.
We'd started to think about something. I'd talked with my opposite number in the church in Wales about doing something together, and also with the primary school, because I've not been at Raglan all that long, only 18 months, and most of it in lockdown. So we talked about that, and also there's a community festival which prior to COVID had taken place. So I'd contacted the organisers of the community festival, but at that point we hit a snag because they're snookered by the same thing that any other festival organiser is at the moment, in that they can't book acts and people to start their community festival because they can't get cancellation insurance for that wider thing. So I'm really interested in this because this seems like something that might be more doable between the two churches and the primary school, which has got a new head coming in the autumn. So this seems quite apposite really for what we maybe have in mind, and then maybe we can kind of size up to the community festival when they can actually get their insurance. So yeah, lots of really good food for thought, lots of practical ideas. I hadn't got that far with what we've been thinking about, so thanks.
Thank you so much, Carol. Thank the Lord your battery on your laptops lasted out as well. I know it's getting low. Brilliant news. Yeah, Charlie, thank you so much for putting together what is practical resources. I'm so delighted that so you've been able to enflesh what is, it's not just a concept, but you've been able to enflesh it into actually what it looks like as a stimulus. And I'm kind of seeing faces on the screen that are going, oh yeah, we could adapt it in this kind of a way, or we could do it slightly differently, or what have you, according to the context that we're in. But this is a really good framework that we can actually use. Charlie's just dropping various different really good links there. Prayer space in schools, excellent. Obviously 24/7 prayer, and then the website that Charlie's built is called the Big COVID Debrief.org, and all those links are in the chat, so you can click on those and take a little look at those. Charlie,
it'll be in the next couple of days that the website's available for sign up, and once it is, then there'll also be kind of a Facebook group, like a private one set up as well, if people want to join it, and then it could be like an ongoing collaboration of ideas then and different resources, because there's a load of things you could do. That's just what we're doing. You know, we've thought about, you know, recording people's stories. You know, we've talked about setting up like a recording studio, but people record songs and do that way. If what you're carrying with you is the idea of enabling people to process, there's so many different avenues to do that. And so maybe it'd be good to collaborate further.
So that answers my question, is how can people sign up to this? So they need to go to that website, couple of days, click on sign up and then register. Then you'll give them access to the downloadable resources and also to the Facebook page. Right. And we can continue to share resources. Guys in Plymouth, Paul and others, I know that there's resources that you're preparing, particularly around the theme of lament. It'd be great if you were happy to share them, and that would be a great one of many channels that no doubt would be interested to see those resources when they're available. We could put this out through the various kind of Baptist minister and Baptist leader Facebook pages as well. Charlie, once it's live, and so we can there'll be people there that I think would be interested in signing up. Do others have any questions, particularly about Charlie's resource at this point in time?
Can I ask Charlie? Yeah, thank you for this evening, all that you've contributed, and for all that you've offered. Is there an intention that in a year's time you might do this again? I'm just very conscious. We talk about a debrief of what's happened. I don't think it's even really started yet, especially for the churches. I think we're going to go through a really tough time in this next 8-9 months as we adapt to this new way. And I wonder whether there's going to be another debrief next year to reflect on what's happened.
Thank you, Nigel.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think when it was first announced all legal things were dropped, I think I got a bit excited by calling it a full debrief, that everything's going back to normal. I'm a very glass half full type person. Absolutely. And I think that there will always be significant points. So I think the next few months are probably a significant juncture in whereas legal restrictions are up, vaccines have been, etc. I imagine over the winter there's going to be restrictions and who knows into early next year, but absolutely. And I think that's why if it's just a facilitated space that can go up and down, or even, to be honest, stay around as people attend things during these coming months, it's just there as a reminder and a helpful thing. But absolutely, I think we'll need 2 or 3 of these.
Carol, you're a bit ahead of us when it comes down to vaccinations in Wales and infection rates. You're doing much better. Any other comments about resources or ideas that you've got that it would be good to share tonight?
There was just really to tie a couple of ideas up. David said about doing a service of remembrance. And one of the things that we do in Bristol very well is knit things and attach them to trees and walls and doors and things. So we were planning to do a service of remembrance and a tree where the local knitting communities could knit things, hearts and things, and attach them on the front of on the trees at the front of the building. And Charlie's ideas adds another element to that. So it makes a bridge from the outside of the church to the inside of the church and invites people in who might otherwise just hang a bit of knitting on a tree. So thank you very much for that. It gives us a more rounded idea of something to do.
It's a cracking idea, that, Sarah. I like that very much. Particularly, I think that does engage multiple groups in the community, and it makes it very intergenerational, potentially a very intergenerational missional idea then, which is fantastic.
Can I just say, I wonder whether there's a point where we can also really say thank you for the people who've emptied our bins, who have served in the shops, who've served in our hospitals, as a part of that debrief, so that they feel that other people have noticed what they've been doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when this was going to be originally a weekly event over 6-7 weeks or something, I think the idea was that each session, we'd do it on a Friday and a Saturday, is we'd invite one of those particular groups to the session to thank them, to allow them to process, but a part of honouring what they did. I think that's a brilliant idea.
I thought that it was great to have a gratitude wall. It'd be very easy to not have that in something like this, but actually it's really important. As Nigel says, the act of recognising people's service and sacrifice very often is in itself part of coming to terms with what's happened, isn't it? So the gratitude wall was a great idea, and I guess if it were appropriate, that was something that could be shown to the public at large or put out on social media or what have you, just so that, especially within local communities, where it is, depending on the local community, you might know your local school teacher or your local PCSO or the nurses or those that work in the local hospice, or that you might even know the name of your postie and your bin man or your bin woman. So wouldn't it be great for those named people in local communities to get that sense of gratitude from those that they've been serving so selflessly? It'd be fantastic. Charlie, I didn't tell you, I'm springing this on you a little bit, I'm so sorry. But I wonder whether you could just reflect a little bit with us. And this I think maybe is possibly for another webinar, so it is just a very brief one. Just in terms of thinking about the future of us as the church, as Christians gathered together as a witness to Christ and to his kingdom. Partly because I guess your experience has been within, I guess, Mevagissey it is becoming, but has already been in the places that you've served, especially I guess in 24/7 Ibiza, of rhythms of life and rhythms of prayer that have defined community, Christian community for you, that might, I mean, they're not new ideas, I'm sure you would admit that, but that might be a little different to the way we have become church just before COVID. And I guess this resource in many ways is very natural to you, because it almost flows from your experience of what it means to be a follower of Jesus in a community. Would that be fair to say? Would you, can you say briefly, just something about that sense of what it means to be a follower, a disciple of Jesus around a rhythm of prayer that's embedded in a community?
I'll try and be very short. It's obviously a big question, but I think my experience, my wife's experience, has always been where we've been involved, where people have been like rhythm of prayer through the week, connecting together, eating together, kind of a group of people who are on a similar-ish wavelength in terms of engaging with their community. There seems to be something beautiful that happens in the space, beautiful things happen within the church walls, and there seems to be very beautiful things that happen in the space around the church walls in the community, and we often spend our time sitting there. And it's not that the church did one thing, we do another thing, and this kind of somehow connection. Both are doing the same. It's just we get to spend lots of our time just spending time on our community, creating the rhythms outside of their, a Sunday rhythm maybe, or in different ways. And we found that in that way, we're able to journey with different sorts of people all the time. And some people who are, really committed to following Jesus, but it leaves so much room for people that aren't. And actually, we've always found in all our communities that everyone's open to prayer, that everyone's actually open to faith. So everyone, that's a very strong word, isn't it? Most people we encounter are very open to prayer and engaging with God. And I think we find that in those spaces, in the communities, those rhythms that happen facilitate that conversation without expectation. And I think that often creates that space. And so many people already in Mevagissey that we've spoken to, won't come to church, aren't interested in the church, but happy to talk about faith, prayer, be receiving prayer. As I said in Ibiza, most of the people that we prayed with or journeyed with us were in the local community and maybe not ready to attend a service or a group of people gathering in that way, but are more than happy to be reading their Bible over dinner, or more than happy to be disciple, just in different creative ways and different creative spaces. It's very mumbly what I just said. You have just thrown me on it. But essentially, looking for creative ways outside of our Sunday-centric events, for me, is a way forward. The gathered and the gathering need to go together. The scattered and the gathered need to work hand in hand a lot closer. We're not here as pioneers thinking, oh, the old church doesn't matter, we can do something new. That's ridiculous. We're here to work and glean with the heritage and the history of the place here and what's been established over the years. But there needs to be creative new ways of engaging with the community that has moved on, that is post-Christian, that is not coming to church. Yeah, I would encourage in the post-COVID era is continue the good things that you want to continue. Absolutely continue gathering together on Sundays and as part of church together, but maybe there's more space for creative new ways engaging with our community that may look very strange. It may involve you starting a service on a Saturday morning in the local fishing yard that is basically a cooked breakfast that you do with a few people, and that's how you engage with them, and releasing people within your churches to do that. Maybe they don't come to church every week, but they are engaging with people in different ways. So that's probably a very jumbled answer.
That was amazing, given that I literally just I chucked you a proper hospital pass then, and like you just took it and lobbed it back at me, mate. So
answers then until you threw that on me.
Yeah, that was spot on. That's amazing. I think it's interesting because I think we can kind of see a resource like this as a standalone, can't we? It becomes in itself a little bit of a project, a mission project, and I think probably I wanted to couch what might seem like that to some eyes within actually a whole understanding of what it means to be a disciple of Jesus and a Christian community in an ongoing way. And that I think is what's born this resource, is your understanding of that.
This resource is not to get people into church. If people come to church, great. It's not. It's meant to allow God to engage with them where they are and continue that engagement in a community afterwards. It's not to pull people in.
So helpful. Thank you. I'm going to pray for us in a second, but just to say, as I do, so in the chat box you'll see the outline of the Big COVID Debrief, the PDF downloads. The link is there. The full presentation tonight will be a PDF download that you'll get in the description box of the video. You can see the website address there for the Big COVID Debrief.org, which is what you'll need to sign up, and then Charlie will give you the links to download the resources, and also access to the Facebook page, which I think will be really helpful to share ongoing resources. And you'll see that also that the webinar will be available by Saturday morning, and it'll be on our YouTube channel, and the YouTube channel is there. I want to encourage you to click some of these links after I've prayed, before you shoot out of the room, or else save the chat and then go back and look at it tomorrow. Yeah, just a good way to kind of keep in contact with us is on our social media, and there's all of our social media links. So we run webinars all year round, and you'll find out about them on various different subjects and topic matters on our Facebook page, Twitter and Instagram accounts. They're all there. Charlie has done this for free. He's supported by Home Mission. If you're a Baptist church and you give to Home Mission, thank you. One of the very many things that is supporting is Charlie and Abby's ministry in Mevagissey. And so thank you for that. And you're also supporting your associations and also the specialist teams in Didcot, in Baptist House, who are working incredibly hard, especially in the last couple of days, to once again update all of the advice that they're giving with the changes in the restrictions that are now being lifted. But if you want to support us, then there's a little link there that you can click on and give us a one-off or a monthly gift to support our work, so we can keep on doing this. So that's all that I've got to say, and I'm going to pray for us. So let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you that you are God and you are good, and even in the most tough and challenging of times, you and your kingdom has never stopped being advanced. Lord, thank you that nothing and no one can stand in the way of your kingdom. And Lord, although sometimes we feel very fragile, and we admit at the moment we're in one of those times where we feel like we've got very little to give at all, where we're pretty exhausted, to be honest with you. Well, thank you that even in that fragile state, you still call us and choose to use us to be part of your mission in this world. And Lord, even though we're convinced you'd be better off without us, I'm so thankful to you that you choose to use us as we give just the little that we have got for your kingdom's sake. And I pray that, as you have done so many times in the past, you multiply that which is given to your kingdom over and over and over and over again, Lord, through our churches and into our communities, that people might know, hear proclaimed and demonstrated what it means to be part of your kingdom, what it means to follow you, Jesus. Lord, thank you for Charlie and Abby. Lord, thank you for their call to be where they are in that community, and for the service that they are and will continue to offer to you and your kingdom there. But Lord, thank you for their willingness to share with us all. And so, Lord, tonight, by your Spirit, will you just seed in our hearts those things which are for us, for our local communities, that you want us to take away and begin to put into practice in our place. And God, we recognize this is just a very simple resource, but Lord, we recognize that you use stuff like this for your purposes. So Lord, I pray that there'll be opportunities that people in our communities will know your healing in their lives as they engage with this stuff, that they'll have that sense of your peace that will fall upon them as they come before you, walking around and processing and reflecting and creating in this resource. Lord, that there will be people in our communities that choose to find out more about you, that choose themselves to follow you, to be part of your kingdom, and to know you closer to them than they ever have before. Lord, start with us and your church. And then, Lord, I pray, God, that you expand this across the communities, not those just represented on the screen, but Lord, across the communities of this world. Lord, as we go from this place tonight, may it be with glad hearts, may it be with hope, not in anything in ourselves, but hope in you, eternal God, for our future, and a recognition that you have purpose for us, even though at the moment we feel so fragile, even at the moment we feel like we are so exhausted. Even the little that we've got, you will use for your kingdom purposes. Be with us, I pray. Hear our prayer. Amen.